Okay, everybody, so we are going to get started. We're a little late here. We have a live stream that just is going there, right, Reed?
Correct.
Reed's in charge of it at this table, so try not to scream too much around this table throughout the evening. Otherwise, I'm Tom Noblock. Welcome to our second live event in the Riverside Chats series. We're really excited to do this. I know the weather has not necessarily been on our side. It's harder to get people to show up to an event than it is to get them to click on a link. But luckily, there is a live stream that's going on, and there's a podcast that's available after what we do tonight. So there are lots of ways to do this. And part of, just in case you are new, in case you have no idea what's going on here, Riverside Chats is an idea where we are exploring basically anybody who's interested in Omaha. What are they doing? And it's not even limited to Omaha, really. If you're interested anywhere nearby, what are you doing? We want to talk to you. So come on. If you want to come on, you know somebody who's interested, feel free to let us know. But we've done a few. We have a couple up already if you want to go through the backlog. So just follow us on any podcasting app, like us on Facebook, which is Riverside Chats. And it's also important, I think, before we get started here, just to note, this event is in collaboration, obviously, with B-Side of the Benson Theatre. What B-Side of the Benson Theatre is doing is raising funds to renovate the Benson Theatre, which is right next door. It's a very cool local project. You can find all kinds of information on that. There's other donation options in the back there, and then the people at the bar will be happy to tell you about it as well. In case the conversation gets boring, you can go talk to them about it or something like that. So that's a cool project, especially if you're interested in Omaha arts, because there will be all kinds of things that can happen right over there, but they need the money for that to happen. So part of what we're doing here is if you bought drinks tonight, thank you, because you helped donate something that will help renovate the Benson Theatre and keep the lights on and everything else. So thank you for helping Omaha arts, helping Omaha culture, everything else. Tonight we're not talking arts though, tonight we're talking to Big Muddy. So we have two representatives from Big Muddy talking about urban farming, which I think is fascinating, and I'm really excited to talk to them. So before I keep rambling, let's just bring on our guests. Come on, guys. Let me shake hands or something. All right. So you guys have to share a mic. I'm sorry. I'm gonna hog this one as the host. So okay. First off, why don't you guys introduce yourselves before we get going? Yeah, you can hand it off, you can talk, you can both lean in together. I don't know, it can be as awkward as you want to make it.
Do a duet.
You could, yeah, do you have any duets prepared? Acapella?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that a lot of that happening on the farms?
That's what bonds people together is by singing, and then we'll get out in the field and keep singing.
That's right. Okay, so introduce yourselves.
Yeah, so I'm Brent Lubbert with Big Muddy Urban Farm, executive director. I've been with the farm for 7 years and constant force throughout the organization.
I'm Eduardo Quintero. You can call me Eddy. I'm a resident this year for 2019, and yeah, that's my association.
Okay, cool. So thank you so much to both of you. Let's start just in general. How did you, first off, are you guys from Omaha?
Yep, born and raised in Omaha. I did move out to San Francisco for a couple years before running out of money and coming back home and realizing just how beautiful Omaha is and how much opportunity there is to live a good life here. So.
No, I'm not from Omaha, or I wasn't born in Omaha. I call Texas home. It's the easiest answer without getting too convoluted into different politics and what it means to call somewhere home. But yeah, right now Omaha is my home, and I'm definitely proud to be here.
What city in Texas?
Central Texas, so Killeen.
Okay, the reason why I ask is basically, was there much exposure to farming when you guys were growing up?
Well, so I call Texas home, but I grew up, my childhood was spent in Missouri, northern Missouri, just south of Kirksville, if anybody knows that. Wow, the limited audience is familiar.
We're very selective with the limited audiences.
Yeah, so it was interesting to grow up in a rural area and be exposed to a lot of the farm life, but then in my adolescence and in my early 20s, I didn't connect with any of that, and I felt like I grew further and further away from some of my roots. And so yeah, it's just really awesome to kind of get back to where I started from. Yeah.
And I grew up a city kid. My mom comes from St. Paul, Nebraska, so every now and then we visit relatives out there. That's like kind of central Nebraska near Grand Island. but yeah, didn't have much experience with gardening or connection to agriculture growing up though.
Yeah, so I mean, like that's what I'm curious about, especially since you're from Omaha. Outside of people maybe growing a little bit in their backyard, I don't know a ton of people who have, at least in my experience, a whole lot of either interest or hobbies even related to farming. So I was curious, what was the point when you sort of got the bug for it? And maybe that's the wrong terminology because there's probably a lot of bugs involved with what you do, but metaphorically.
Sometimes good bugs, sometimes bad bugs. Yeah, so for me, what really brought me to this work is from working on a documentary. So my formal education is within filmmaking, and this documentary is feature length called Growing Cities, and we traveled across the country interviewing urban agriculturalists. So going to these different cities, meeting these people doing amazing work that brings community together and also starts this conversation around how can we build a sustainable food system, how can we live a better life. That just totally rocked my world, inspired me, and so getting back home, had to get my hands in the soil. So that's how I got involved.
I think for me it was just a growing concern with the way history was unfolding, and just kind of a desire to do more and get involved somehow. And I feel like this opportunity just kind of fell in my lap. I'm sure we'll talk more about it, but Big Muddy seems like a very unique opportunity from an academic standpoint. So yeah, I just felt like over the years it was just kind of like pushing me to become more and more involved and concerned with our food and with the city development, and just like, you know, the community. So yeah.
Well, and so like, I mean, I imagine for both of you, when you decide that you want to spend a significant portion of your life or you devote your life to something like urban farming, it's not like it's a hugely lucrative choice necessarily, right? So it has to come from some sort of passion. Like, what do you attribute that passion to? Like, so is it thinking about the future? Is it just like rage at what's going on? Or where does that come from? Where you think like, yeah, I'm okay with the discomfort that this lifestyle might cause, but it's worth it for me?
Yeah, so even now I'm still learning how much like discomfort and like sacrifice, you know, is involved.
Sacrifice is so much better than discomfort. Thank you.
But yeah, regardless of you know, how much effort and energy it takes to embark upon any sort of endeavor, I think it's definitely your motivation why you want to do it, and then that keeps you driving forward. So for me, it was just from like a humane standpoint. You know, there's so many different aspects of urban farming that helps solve a lot of problems, whether it's like environmental or social or political. So I just feel like it made a lot of sense for me to try to get involved in something like this, even with like basically no real background besides like childhood, like helping my grandpa like pick beets. You know, like I didn't know what was going on. I had no experience. So yeah, that drive, that passion for humanity really makes sense to grow food for people.
Yeah, and it's getting to this livelihood. So I mean, you're going to be working most of your life anyways. This line of work, you're not going to make a whole bunch of money, but you are going to be able to support yourself. And so you'll be able to support yourself while also growing food that you can then also eat. So you have two ways of supporting yourself in that way. And so would you rather be working in a way that you're working for yourself and also supporting others, or joining into a job that you might not like, even though you might make some money, but you don't like it? So at the end of the day, you're not very fulfilled. With farming, you're fulfilled because you're working with nature, you're learning every day because something's new. You're understanding how much this last snowfall here, how's that going to affect the season going forward. So every day there's just something new that presents itself that keeps you going. So.
You studied filmmaking, you said?
Yeah.
What kind of filmmaking?
So documentary film is where my heart lies, and cinema verite and yeah, just getting to the truth of matters.
Sure, and documentary filmmaking seems like it has that, you can channel passion into something that hopefully has some kind of real world results. So were you able to sort of, when you switched from maybe thinking about documentary filmmaking over to something like farming, was it sort of like the same drive as being satisfied with both of them? Or what kind of documentary films did you want to make, first of all?
Yeah, well, documentary films, cinema verite, so looking at ordinary life and being able to observe it multiple times. I don't know, I haven't really thought about filmmaking in about 7 years. So
what's your favorite, like what were the models you had when you were thinking about making stuff?
Sure, I mean, the inspiration comes from John Cassavetes, is one that I go back to a lot, A Woman Under the Influence, which isn't a documentary film, but it's presented in that very raw documentary manner, and just being able to, and also presenting ordinary life too.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's just like my nerdy interests are going to spill over here a little bit. But so, I mean, as far as that goes, even like when I've been making movies, so I've made a few feature films. They're really, independent, micro budget type stuff. But something for me that I've increasingly been focused on is like, it bothers me, especially if you have a conscience for like what the world is like and how you're doing things. You start to even think about making a movie in the most like friendly to the environment way, like how much trash we're producing when we make this stuff that I've started to think about. And if any, there's at least 2 people in here who've seen my movies, and it's like I'm starting to get obsessed with like those themes come into the movie itself. And so, like, were you interested in farming or like eco themes in general with what you're doing? Was that where you were going as far as your interests were?
Yeah, I'd say yes, because so how I got involved, at least with Growing Cities, is that coming from San Francisco, you see this wonderful food culture that is out there, and then you get back home to Omaha and you're wondering, how come we live in an agricultural state and we don't have much of a healthy food culture here, at least when I first moved back, and so then that kind of spurred me into this documentary, because when we were putting it together in the pre-production, it was based around these discussions about food and what's going on in the world. So. Okay,
and then so, I mean, was there a point where you think like, okay, a movie's not enough, I have to actually do something more tangible?
Definitely. I mean, you're just with so many activists within their own communities, and they just put a fire in you. So, yeah, you get home and that fire burns. So.
And so, were you involved with Big Muddy from the very beginning?
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So were you the sole? I don't know what the originator. What's the word I should be looking for?
Sure.
Okay.
Co-founder. It's always been a community organization. It was built by a community, and so part of that community was 7 original co-founders that came together, started meeting, seeing vacant lots in our neighborhoods, and understanding that it's hard to get access to fresh, healthy food, and so why don't we put those 2 together and try something out and put a farm together.
How do you get to the point though where like you have that idea and then even have any idea how to start to putting it together though?
Friends.
Okay. Friends just knew did you have friends who had done something similar?
So I mean, we coming together with 7 people. We all have our strengths and weaknesses, and we can bring those strengths forward. So some of us knew a little bit more about the horticultural side of things. I knew a little bit more about the communications end of things in starting a business, and so we all bring these strengths together, and we're able to push it forward as a group.
At what point did it seem like a real tangible thing that you could put together though? I mean, because surely it starts at first, you're like, wouldn't this be cool?
The idea to fruition, it's when someone starts to believe in you. So part of that story is that our first lot, which we still grow on today, it's at 33rd in California, right by Cali Tacos, a little east of that. And there's raised beds there. There's also a permaculture forest in the back. And so that spot, vacant, used to have these big tall buildings on it because it was near the business district. And you hear stories of the past that there used to be bootlegging out of the basements of these buildings and that kind of stuff. But then one day a car veers off the road and runs into the house, and then they tear it down, and so now we have this vacant lot. And a couple of guys in the neighborhood that own that lot, Chris Foster and Martin Janicek, we met with them and we discussed our idea with them, and they liked what we wanted to do, and they believed in us. And so by having that partnership and that connection and that belief, that really pushes one step forward to then find another lot and that kind of stuff.
So what was the pitch at that point?
Well, and so that gets into Gifford Park. It's a wonderful place, great culture of growing that's been started from neighbors for many years with the Gifford Park Community Garden, and that's been around 18 years now. And so with that growing culture, then we talked about how we could help out with the youth garden that's established in the Gifford Park Community Garden, and also start to kind of evolve the community garden to this next stage of more of a business-focused growing culture.
Well, and so is the business then just selling what you produce, or how does it become a business?
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's so like community gardening is where you have plots and neighbors can come by and they plant their own plots and also give that produce out to friends and family and neighbors and that kind of stuff. With urban farming, it's bringing that produce that you grow to the market, and so that can be a variety of ways, but it is kind of bringing what you grow to a market and making it accessible that way.
Okay, and so, I mean, I'm just curious, so at what point did it seem like that would be sustainable enough, though, as opposed to just, if you were to grow something and bring it to a farmer's market, but no, it's like, okay, we want to actively be buying lots and sort of expanding it, and, you know, obviously you can produce more the more lots you have. What's the point where you think, like, okay, this is a feasible business model, we can make enough money from this to actually, you know, pitch to people? I mean, I'm just curious, like, I could have that idea, I would have no idea how to turn it into a self-sustaining anything.
Sure. And so urban farming as like a sustainable for-profit entity, it requires a centralized plot of land that you can really place a lot of intensity onto it, because vegetable production is intensive growing. And so there's a lot of successful models that way. By having a bunch of broken up plots, it makes it a little bit more challenging, but the benefits with having broken up plots are you're getting more community involvement, and there's a lot more educational understanding because you're working with a different soil type at this plot than you are with that plot. And so Big Muddy is an educational organization for that reason, but you can take that small core experience and let that grow, and so extrapolate the reality of it and take it to a centralized plot.
And so is Omaha a good, I mean, would you say, obviously you think Omaha is a good location because you're doing it here, but what is it about Omaha other than the fact that you're from here that either has its advantages or is worthwhile for this place instead of moving somewhere else?
It's spacious. So I mean, the sprawl is something that kind of look towards as that it's eating away farmland, but then also within that sprawl, for urban agriculture at least, there are pockets that you can start to do this work, and so there's opportunity within that sprawl. But then at the same time, in terms of larger food production, we don't want that sprawl to continue. So Omaha, though, is unique in that there is space available.
And are people receptive to the message? Like let's make an urban farm, let's buy some of these lots?
For sure. But I wonder if Eddy has anything to say about it.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Yeah. In terms of space, I don't think Omaha is any more unique than any other metropolis. I use that loosely. Obviously, Omaha isn't a bustling metropolis, but there's so much wasted space in all our cities. In Chicago, there's a ridiculous amount of empty plots and alleyways and rooftops. Even, within our own homes, we can grow. So I don't think that Omaha is necessarily unique in the regards of the space, but that urban farming itself is unique to any space. And it's something that is becoming more and more well known and utilized. So yeah, urban farming is a unique opportunity for any urban space. And yeah, specifically to Omaha, there is a lot of concern and desire to progress society and our local community and the global community even. So that's nice to see how many engaged, willing people there are that allows urban farming to work and just.
Well, I was just saying, you say there's a lot of wasted space. How do you decide, like, what should space be used for, or what makes it wasted?
That's an interesting question. I think if the space isn't being utilized for anything, then it's a waste. If it's just sitting there and it's not, even if it's for the sake of art, and like we're talking about, film is limiting in terms of activism, but it still has its purpose. And art is also very limiting in terms of activism, but it creates dialogue, it gets people talking, it gets people involved. So yeah, just finding a productive, like mutually beneficial way to utilize the space, I think makes it like not wasteful. Yeah.
How do you feel about lawns, like grass? You like
I'm allergic.
Oh, might be the wrong field.
No, I'm not allergic to grass. But yeah, I don't mind lawns. But like once again, that's a space that could be utilized to grow food. And then talking about land usage, it's somewhere around like 50% of our usable, like inhabitable landmass is not utilized for like healthy food. It's a lot of commodity crops for like cattle and things like that. So yeah, there's a waste of space where we're using it to grow food that is then turned into processed food, which then turns us into an unhealthy society in many facets in terms of consumption. So yeah, I think using our lawns to grow food would be like a productive use of that space. And there's limited space left on this earth, limited land. So yeah, if we use that land to grow healthy, accessible food, then that'll just make some strides forward.
Well, and so you talked before a little bit about even soil quality. So I'm thinking, like, if I'm somebody who decides I want to use my lawn to make food now, I don't know the first thing about soil. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm completely clueless. Like, how do you even get a handle on some of that stuff in Omaha?
That is a great place to start. So you're going to have all these questions. And within Omaha, there's one primary thing to be looking out for, and that's lead in the soil, especially if you live 58th Street and East. But thankfully, there's a lead registry, so you can go online to omahalead.org and look up your address and check whether it's been remediated, what kind of level it's at, and that kind of stuff. That is something to look out for. But aside from that, you can start to plant the seed and see how that seed grows.
I mean, that's like the extent of my strategy, though. It's like, if it doesn't work, all right, the lawn's dead. Over.
So yeah, I mean, start small. You can cut like a 1 square foot, dig a hole, pretty much, not a hole, but because you want it flat, but then plant a tomato seed and just go for one plant. And then see how it grows.
I planted some onions one year. I think they just got eaten, or that nothing grew. I don't know. But, I didn't learn anything from this experience.
Sure. Well, maybe onion's not your calling.
I don't know how to find my calling.
What kind of vegetable do you like?
I mean, I'll eat anything, honestly.
Sure.
I'm somebody who even put bird feeders in the backyard. It's like, should I grow something for bunnies if they're in the backyard? What do I need to eat the food? I don't know.
I can say you want to eat birds.
No. My colleague is like birds. The birds in the back. No, nothing like that.
Like the bird feeders.
Yeah, I'm trapping them. Yeah.
In that case, if you're like really unsure where to start, you can buy transplants, so sprouts from nurseries, and get a tomato plant that's already been growing, and then plant that right in the ground, and you know where it is, you see it, and it's going good, and so you have a good starting point with a transplant, because sometimes if you plant a seed and you just don't know if it's like a week later, it's like, should that be coming up or not? So the transplant's good.
Shameless plug.
Yeah,
we'll have transplants for sale if you want it.
Right. Well, that's partially
Or
why I
anyone
asked.
else. And they'll be awesome plants. So Yeah.
Well, and so okay, since you guys actually know what you're talking about here, I should not just like ramble about my own failures at growing onions. But like in terms of, so you buy a lot. What do you have to do to that lot to make it actually grow whatever you want to grow?
Yeah, it's suppress the grass most likely, and you can do that by throwing down some cardboard once the snow melts, so that the grass doesn't start to grow and become vigorous. So then when you start to till it up, not that it always has to be tilled up, you can also use a shovel and dig it up, depending on what space, what size you're aiming for. And so you want to be working the soil and make a bed out of that. And then you want to have a weed management system in place, which mulching, throwing down grass clippings or straw, that will help you out so much once the season starts up. And then also having a pest management, understanding what you're planting and what might go after those plants.
Okay, so if you're thinking about that, do you guys use, if the idea is you want to not like harm anything, or you want to be thinking consciously about how you're affecting the yard and whatever life might be in there, you would probably advocate not using a bunch of like chemicals on the yard?
Definitely.
Okay, so so part of that then, I assume Big Muddy wants to sort of teach people how to actually handle their own yards in addition to, support what you're doing in terms of building or growing food, right?
Sure.
So like, how do you get the message out to the people about how to teach them about some of this stuff?
So we have farm tours throughout the season, and that's a good way to get hands-on experience what it's like to be growing in urban lots while it's in progress. And we invite community groups and host tours throughout the year and teach what's going on and how to do this in your own yard.
I feel like people seem really receptive to the idea of being self-sustaining. It's like I can make all my own food, I can live on my own. Basically, I can be, Henry David Thoreau if I want to be. Why do you think people are so into that idea, even though they don't seem to practice it in large numbers?
Because you feel empowered, you feel fulfilled, that
Just
you
theoretically.
you can rely on yourself. You feel that you're in a better place.
Yeah, and I think it's ultimately about a deeper connection with nature. So a lot of things that make you self-sustainable require you to connect with nature in a very direct way. So for instance, with farming, you have to go get your hands dirty, and you spend a lot of time putting in all this work and effort to then reap what you sow. So that can be very satisfying for an individual rather than the immediate gain or satisfaction of just purchasing an item, building it on your own, cultivating it, and like putting that love into it. I don't feel much of an exchange of love besides maybe like the cashier or something like that whenever I purchase a product.
You feel love with cashiers?
Yeah.
I've never experienced that one.
No doubt. They're wonderful people. They're there providing customer service. Anyway, So actually, tangentially being involved with all aspects of your life then creates a deeper essence there rather than being disconnected from your everyday life. So creating a connection with food and farming in nature, I think, is what gets people kind of hyped up. But that hype can die off whenever you realize how much effort and energy has to go into this, you know. So yeah, it's like we kind of talked about the motivation, just staying motivated about your mission statement, and why you're doing something. So if it's just that like surface level desire to like, oh well, I want to do something for the sake of doing it rather than like that deeper connection and drive, then you can, I think, easily burn out.
Right, well, and that's even like, I think Thoreau's made a big deal about like live deliberately was one of his big mottos, but even he didn't stay in the woods for that long, right? It was only a couple of years. I mean, so I guess at least partially what I'm talking about too is why do urban farming rather than just make a farm somewhere outside of the city in general?
I think access is one of the biggest things. Also, a lot of farms seemingly are struggling to, remain above water, I guess, in the black. You have like these massive commercial farms that it's just like seemingly very difficult to compete with. So it's difficult to be a farmer and keep your family on the farm and have this sustainable business. We went to a conference and they were discussing how a lot of the family members go and work jobs in the cities or other jobs rather than just working the land. And I think that's definitely reflective of the economy and then the importance that we place on farming. So I think urban farming kind of bridges that disconnect between the consumer and then the producer. So it kind of allows them to come together and just really benefit from each other and that exchange. That otherwise, I wouldn't know where my food comes. I wouldn't know my farmer. I wouldn't be able to go see that plot.
Yeah, I feel like people aren't even they don't even think about the concept of knowing their farmer in Omaha for the most part. It's like you're saying that the cashier is the only person they talk to in an exchange of goods. It's not the person who made anything for the most part. So, I mean, do you see a future of Omaha that's drastically different in that sense, where it's a lot more people widespread just accepting, like, I want to know the person who made this. I want to actually have a relationship with all the producers of things, as opposed to being like big commercial business. Like, let's actually have a real community and make things and consume things within it.
Yeah, I think it's already happening every single day. There's definitely a lot of local involvement in many different scenes, including the urban agriculture scene.
I think the first place to start with that is with a co-op, and there's a lot of discussion going around of how are we going to put a co-op together, where is a co-op going to take place. And
for someone dumb like me who can't even grow onions, what's a co-op exactly?
Yes, a co-op, cooperative. So usually it's a grocery store that many farmers come together and put their goods into the grocery store. There's many models of cooperative grocery stores. Some of them are worker-owned and also volunteer-based too. And so, it's about bringing in different farmers to then support this grocery store that is supplying local produce or local goods.
Is there legislative support for what you're doing?
For a co-op?
Yeah, I mean, like, is there funding? Is there grants or are there grants or is there any like push to try to move Omaha this direction, like in this other state or just from the city?
There is one bill that is working towards more community gardening and having water access, because water access within urban lots and urban agriculture and community gardening is the biggest challenge.
How do you get around it? Like, what can you do?
So you can pipe water on by tapping into the existing system, which costs upwards of $2,000 or more. So sometimes that's not always available to do that right off the bat, and you need water every season. And so there's a bill to support match funds with getting water piped onto community garden lots.
Right, like I would think if the city was really committed to it, in actually funding a lot of these things. The idea is you end up economically even keeping a lot of that money in Omaha, right? Because if everyone's growing everything, the money stays in Omaha.
Right.
So it seems like it'd be worthwhile. Would there be any initiatives that you would support that would make a big difference for what you're trying to do?
Yeah, so I mean, there is the land bank that is starting to open up plots of land for $25 a year, which if you take rent away, I mean, and also to jump back just a second and then I'll come forward.
That's what I've been doing all night anyway. So.
With the like urban agriculture, why urban agriculture and not growing in a rural setting or anything like that? It is this discrepancy of young people wanting to grow but not having land access. In the urban center, there are these plots of land that are more accessible than, say, getting 100 acres or anything like that. It's capital intensive, and if you don't really live in that community, you're not going to know what land's for sale or anything like that. You really need to be ingrained in the community. So for young people who are like, I want to grow, I only have so many seasons in my life, and I need to start now. I'm going to start on this plot of land, and then from there, I can take that somewhere else as well. But as you start to get better at it, you can establish yourself within that community, and then you know your farmer, and also the distribution is a lot easier. So, and then moving forward in terms of initiatives, that's with the land bank is $25 a year, and it helps revitalize communities because it's a development that's not significantly capital intensive. So we're not proposing to build a even $250,000 building or anything like that. We're proposing to buy some seeds for like $100 and plant those on this vacant lot, grow some food, which then has value in that, and keep moving from there. So there are initiatives with the land bank that is pushing forward on this. I mean, sure, there's issues within how all that gets addressed because land ownership is a sensitive subject. So.
Yeah, what is it that there's like 2% of land in Nebraska is public land, or yeah, something like that. I think is it 98%, 97% is privately owned?
I could understand that, yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, we like our land here
For sure. Yeah.
Well, so like, what's the future for Big Muddy? I mean, where do you see it going, other than some of the things we've talked about?
Sure. I mean, for the farm, it is trying to get this next step for residents should they want to continue in urban farming or in farming agriculture, sustainable agriculture. How can we support residents in taking the next step in that career? And so we're working on what that looks like. That could be considered another residency singing component that is located outside the city. So you're starting to understand production scale a little bit more. It could also mean another residency within the city, growing on lots to expand the experience.
It's probably a good opportunity to talk about the residencies in general. What is the residency program?
Yeah, so the residency program is, there's 5 residents and then a second year resident as well, so 6 residents altogether, living in 2 houses for a whole year, and at the beginning of the year put together a business plan that is realized and put into action on the plots. So there's 5 plots near the house, there's 3 chicken coops, and also incorporated with the residency is this iterative learning process, service learning process, where you're hosting tour groups, so you're starting to explain what you are doing and learning by that explanation, and also teaching youth garden lesson plans as well.
So Eddie, you are a resident, right? Okay, how did you first hear about the whole program?
Well, I had lived in Omaha for a short period of time, about 4.5 years ago, and just out of pure happenstance, I stumbled across Big Muddy, and I'm sure at that point it was still pretty early on. I don't think even the residency program wasn't developed until 2017. So I just was kind of following Big Muddy, and there was, even at that point, it was a very small following, but they caught my attention for whatever reason, some sort of awesome social media post. And then when I came back to Omaha, I saw a lot of information about the residency program, and it almost seemed too good to be true, and just one of those opportunities that I didn't think that I would secure, just because it seemed like such a rare, unique, and beneficial opportunity that they would only select the creme de la creme, and they wanted people who would be able to produce and who had a lot of experience with farming and horticulture and agriculture in general, that would almost be like, I took it more as though I was applying for a job. So like my resume, which amazingly we didn't have to submit a resume or anything of that sort, but if I did on paper, I was like, there's no way. But that's kind of what's really amazing about this opportunity, is empowering individuals to then, understand a lot of the nitty-gritty and the business aspects, and really just get them involved with the community and a lot of activism. And so it's just, I don't know. Just to say, it's an amazing opportunity. I'm really grateful for it. But submitted my application. The focus was short answer questions, ranging from what do you want to grow to how do you deal with interpersonal conflicts and things like that.
Were you doing anything related to farming at that point?
Not in the slightest.
So they ask, what do you want to grow? How do you pick an answer?
Well, I was just thinking what I like to eat.
What did you come up with?
I think my answer was something along the lines of leafy green vegetables, just because they're so
You like to eat leafy greens?
I do, yeah. I'm a sucker for the greens. So it was a lot of questions of that sort. And I actually submitted it very late. It was just kind of like, well, I might as well try. And then the next step after the application, which I can't stress enough, on a lot of applications, it's been resume and a lot of paper things, but it seemingly was like, how do you feel about life and things? What do you want to do? Who you are? Really getting to it. And then the next step was an in-person interview with 5 members throughout the community, board members, farmers, the farm coordinator or the second-year resident was there as well. And then it was just basically like a conversation, which was also really nice. So.
Well, you seem like you have a lot of passion for it, as well as kind of a cohesive worldview that you can talk about in relation to that. Was that something you had at the time you applied, or did that sort of develop over the program?
Yeah, I think if I would have applied 4 or 5 years ago, not even considering the paper prerequisites, I wouldn't have had that worldview. So I think it just kind of came full circle with what needs to be done and how we can do it and how we can really move things forward. And I definitely think the way that we develop our cities in the next 20, 30 years is going to make some of the biggest differences that we can see, once again, whether it's social, economic, political, whatever have you. I think it's amazingly important for us to give access to food in an urban environment.
Well, okay, so in terms of when you're picking people for the residencies, are you looking for, if he didn't have a whole lot necessarily experience but has a lot of passion, what is it you're looking for, and how do you pick the right people for the project?
And that is where you have a committee, and so within that process of discussing things out about the applications, where within the applications the committee only sees the short answer questions, so not going into whose name is on it or any of the protected class information. And so just looking at what do you want to do, and thinking back at the beginning of Big Muddy, there were quite a few of us, myself included, that didn't have any experience. But the experience itself teaches you. Mm-hmm. And so it doesn't rely strictly on if you have growing experience. You have some sort of experience, some sort of strength that you're going to bring to the table. And so
as long as it's not like, what food do you like? You're like, burgers. You're like, well,
we can't raise cows in the city.
Birds. We have chickens. That kind of counts.
Right.
This is probably a good time. I know you guys have a lot of familiar faces in the audience. It's not the massive audience, not the best audience necessarily to open up to questions, but it's a good opportunity, especially if I did not ask something and you're like, wait a second, what is that? Or like, you should definitely have asked this thing. Does the audience have any questions that they want to ask to our people up here? Yes?
So how do I go about getting the products that you guys are growing? Is there anywhere in particular I should go?
Yes, certainly. Just for the question was, how would one obtain Big Muddy's products? So there's several methods. You can definitely begin with subscribing to our email list, and then through that we'll put out information about our CSA. And I think community-supported agriculture is pivotal. Once again, you get to meet your farmer, you get to see the food, you can do a farm tour, you become really hands-on involved with your food, the food that you consume. So yeah, there's the CSA information that we'll put out. We'll be at the Gifford Park Markets on Fridays.
Okay.
That starts at the end of May. That'll be from 5 to 7. It's a really awesome market. And then also Highlander Market on Thursdays. It's 33rd and Burnett. Burnett. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So we'll be at a couple of markets. I definitely recommend attending both if you can. Just kind of get involved with other vendors in the community, and yeah. And then I feel like I'm missing something. CSA Market.
Oh, it's on Facebook.
Yeah, our social media. And then also you can come like physically to us. We live on 33rd and Burt. All our plots are within a half mile. So yeah, the original I guess was 33rd in California. So yeah, we have Burt Street, Webster, California, Cottage Grove one, all there. So you're more than welcome to come see what we're doing, and yeah. So
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you guys try to sell anything to like local markets in terms of like if it's a grocery store or anything like that, or is that against the philosophy?
Grocery stores seemingly are kind of difficult. It seems like a little more competitive.
In terms of like they don't give you a good deal to actually sell what you have?
I think that they're a little more concerned about profit depending on the grocery store. And then from a business standpoint, if they can get cheaper produce that isn't necessarily local, then a lot will go with that. So where we really thrive is with the local community, people who will come to the markets and buy our stuff. But then also there are restaurants throughout Omaha that will utilize our produce. Right now we're working with Kitchen Table, Crazy Gringa Hot Sauce, pretty good stuff, Boiler Room, and then we're still like crafting connections. But then at the same time with restaurants, it can be difficult because the restaurant that I work, they want 60 dozen eggs for a weekend, and we can produce a little less than 20 dozen on a week. So it's also that supply. So our emphasis and our basis is the individual in the community, and not necessarily trying to get into grocery stores and have these larger wholesale markets that, yeah, if we could, we would profit more, but then there's that disconnect with the consumer,
Fair enough. Yeah.
And also with grocery stores too, they're expecting the farm to have a very large insurance policy, which usually comes with scale. And so, yeah, there's a scale that we can't supply to the grocery store. Also, the grocery store wants this insurance policy in case someone gets sick from the produce that we grow or something like that, because they're such a large business that they're just protecting themselves. And so it doesn't quite match up with our scale. So.
Any other questions from the audience? So a lot of these people, these two tables are, you know them? Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like,
Live
how come
together.
you guys are so awesome?
Oh, yeah. Are you their boss right there at the table? It's a good opportunity to suck up.
It's because we all live together. So.
What?
Okay, where does the name Big Muddy come from?
Right, Riverside Chats. So it is the Riverside. It's the Missouri River is the Big Muddy nickname, and that's where it came from. Though I mean, I was at a conference in like St. Louis, and they were talking about a river in like Tennessee that they nicknamed the Big Muddy too. So I think any river, homage to the river.
Just to rivers in general.
Yeah,
Rivers are good.
Yeah,
Water.
Yeah, great homage.
You may notice our standard label has a farmer in like worker mud boots, rain boots, and I just want to clear up the record. Those aren't Brent's knees on that exhibition.
I feel like I'm missing something.
The Big Muddy label, the main one we use is it's like very skinny legs with like very bony knees.
It's not Brent.
Are you
It's a cartoon.
Yeah, it's a cartoon depiction of someone that we don't know.
You worried people will think it's your knees or something?
I thought it was Brent's knees.
But then I told him how bad my knees are, and that just couldn't be my knees. But those knees are all of us. Whoever wants to fill the boots. So.
All right. So, what's the best thing people can do other than follow you on Facebook? Go to the markets. Is there anything else you want our audience to take away about how they can help with what you're trying to do here?
Yeah, go to the website, join the emailing list, and stop by for a tour. We'd love to have you.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for the invite. Thank you.